Hello, my name is Michael Price. I'm the Executive Director of the San Angelo Nature Center. I want to thank you for watching the San Angelo Nature Center's program on the City Channel 17. Today we're going to talk a little bit about rattlesnakes. We're going to talk about some of the myths and old wives' tales about rattlesnakes, as well as some of the facts, as well as pull out three of the species that are found here. There are 3 species that are found in the Concho Valley. We'll get to those in just a moment. For a snake to be a rattlesnake, you must first have a rattle. The rattle is at the end of the tail and is used as a warning device. As you can hear this guy rattling right now, maybe. If I get a little bit closer, you might be able to hear what he's doing. But the rattle is added every time a snake sheds its skin, which could happen anywhere from 6 times a year for babies to once every year or once every 2 years for adults. The shed skin, here with this laminated copy right here, happens as a snake grows. As a snake grows, its skin grows as well. But unlike us, where our skin comes off in small pieces, a snake's skin comes off all at one time. And every time a rattlesnake sheds its skin, it adds a new button. That's one reason that you cannot tell how old a rattlesnake is by the number of rattles. Because like I said before, some baby snakes may shed up to 6 times a year, adding 6 buttons in 1 year, whereas adults, full-grown adults, may only shed once every year or every other year. So it's impossible to tell how old a snake is by the number of rattles it has. The most common rattlesnake that's found in the Concho Valley is the western diamondback rattlesnake, Crotalus atrox. These have a reputation of being very aggressive and very actually mean animals, but that's actually not the case. Diamondbacks are typically very passive. Out of 200 diamondbacks we may see in a year, we may only have half a dozen or so even rattle at us. As you can see, this guy right here is not even trying to rattle. In fact, he's looking for a shady spot to get away. I've really got to keep my eye on him because he is a large individual. He's just under 5 feet, weighs about 10 to 12 pounds. You can see him sticking his tongue out as he's looking around. Snakes do not have a sense of hearing. To make up for that sense of hearing, they have a different organ that's located in the roof of the mouth called a Jacobson's organ. That is why a snake has a forked tongue. There are 2 openings in the roof of the mouth that as a snake is crawling around, he will stick his tongue out, pick up air particles, and put it in the Jacobson's organ, those 2 holes in the top of the mouth. And he can sense, literally taste, what's going on around him. Diamondback rattlesnakes can achieve lengths of up to 6 feet. There are tales of western diamondbacks reaching 8, 9, 10 feet, and those are actually false. There's never been a diamondback recorded over 6.5 feet. Another reason you can't tell, going back to the age of a rattlesnake by the number of rattles, is you can see this rattlesnake's tail right here is actually broken off. As they get older, as they crawl through rocks and cactus and mesquites, these rattles have a tendency to break off. They're very, very brittle. Rattlesnakes are venomous. They are dangerous to people. The main purpose of a rattlesnake venom is not for defense, however. The main purpose of rattlesnake venom is to kill the food items that it wants to eat. Diamondbacks prey, or all rattlesnakes prey, on mostly rodents. Mice, rats, small rabbits. And what happens is the snake will bite its prey, inject the venom, and then allow the animal to crawl off and die while it uses its tongue to pick up air particles, to pick up its scent, and literally trace it to where it's died. Then it, in turn, swallows it from that point. You can see how this guy's really trying to escape from me here. He has not gotten in the typical defensive stance. He hasn't even rattled. He's just trying to find a shady place to where he can get away from me. He feels very, very defenseless out in the open like this. The second purpose of the venom is defense. But a lot of rattlesnakes, when they bite, will not release any venom or very little venom, will release very little venom or no venom at all, because they want to save their venom for their food. That is why baby rattlesnakes have a tendency to be a little more dangerous than adults. The venom properties are the same, but babies tend to be a little more irritable and a little more jumpy, and therefore will let out more venom than adults will most of the time, because adults know they need to conserve their venom to obtain their food. Again, this is the western diamondback rattlesnake, the one that's most commonly seen for rattlesnake roundup hunters, most commonly seen right here in the Concho Valley. I'll stick him away real quick. The second most common rattlesnake found in the Concho Valley is the prairie rattlesnake. Now, all the stories you see and read and hear about rattlesnakes that are very, very aggressive, this would be the one to fit that bill. These are much more common north of San Angelo in the prairie regions, north from about Sterling City on through the Panhandle. They're not near as large as the western diamondback rattlesnake, nor near as common here in the Concho Valley, but they're quite a bit more irritable, quite a bit more vicious almost than the diamondback. They often use this S-coil to coil themselves up, all the while they're rattling, and will actually strike. See if I can elicit a strike out of this guy. Uh-oh. There we go. Not cooperating very well with me here. Again, this species only achieves a length of about 3.5 to 4 feet. You can see the typical S-coil pose. We can turn him around to face the camera here. He's more interested in following me around. Rattlesnakes have two pits on the side of their face that determine heat. And so that's why as I'm walking, he turns with me. He can sense my heat. And so as I turn, he follows with me. Snakes actually have very poor eyesight for the most part. We'll put this guy up and get the third species of rattlesnake that's found in the Concho Valley. Which also happens to be the smallest. These are the least common species of rattlesnake found in the Concho Valley. They can be quite common in some areas, but not near as common as the western diamondback or the prairie rattlesnake. This is called a Sagara rattlesnake. They're also called pygmy rattlesnakes. Sand rattlesnakes are another name that's commonly used. This is a full-grown female. Very rarely do they attain a length of 20 inches. They reach sexual maturity at about 16 inches. They look very similar to the prairie rattlesnake with the large blotches along the dorsal. And they have very small rattles. You can barely hear their rattle. These guys love to live in ground squirrel holes as well as prairie dog holes. They spend 95% of their lives underground, only coming to the surface to look for food and to look for the opposite sex to reproduce. It's important to remember, out of the 35 species of snakes that are found in the Concho Valley, there are only 3 types of rattlesnakes. Very rarely are these encountered in the wild, but if you do see one, best precautions to take are to back away slowly, and if you are bitten, try to kill the snake without injuring yourself anymore, to take with you for a positive identification to one of the local hospitals. There's no such thing as the two-step snake. Any rattlesnake bite from any rattlesnake that's found here in the Concho Valley, you have several hours before the severe symptoms really begin to start. That concludes our talk on the rattlesnakes of the Concho Valley. Thanks, we'll see you next week.